This video, I will go through our website, actually go online, and I'm going to show you the process. So it's not magic. You upload your code base to Vercel, Railway, Render, whatever, your hosting platform is. A VPS even, you upload it there. Whatever happens, right? And it goes online and you're wondering how it's, that happens. So this is a an overview. It's a guide, like it's just what I know about how these things go online. So from a folder on your laptop to a URL, the entire world can visit, every step explained. So let's start with the first step, which is the big picture. Again, this thing is, there's a lot of details I can go. As you can see, software is a big field. So software engineering or software building or programming or whatever, it's a big field. So there's a lot of, details, everything. There's a lot of, rules in place about this. And so again, this is just the four things that happens when you upload a code to an hosting platform. So you have your code, and obviously, the most popular JavaScript, TypeScript, whatever, everything is written in HTML and CSS. You can't avoid that. Your website is written in HTML, CSS, and maybe it is served using a different backend, whatever it may be. It doesn't matter. It's still HTML and CSS at the end of the day. So you have your code. Maybe you're using, I use Django, so templates are in HTML, and I think that goes for, what's the name? Ruby on Rails. Uh, there's this Svelte, SVE, you know, Svelte, or what's the name? Let me see. SVELTE. Yeah, Svelte. This framework, yeah. I don't know how to pronounce it. Svelte, yeah, whatever. Anyways, you have your code, your backend serves it, whoever serves it, and you have a server which is a this thing that hosts your code. So this is where your hosting platform comes in. They have different servers. It's literally Linux machines. Um, these are literally Linux machines, and they are online 24/7. That's where your code lives in. And yeah, it is cheap for hosting your platform per month. So that's how they do it, because a lot of people host their code on the same service. And you have your domain. We'll come to this, www.google.com, whatever. Right, that's the email address. And you have your DNS, which points the domain to the server. So your domain has an IP address, and that IP address has, you know, wants to be served by your server. So your server has to point to, basically, your server, which is where you're hosting your platform, has to point to your website, so that your website can actually lead to the server, which is where your JavaScript lives, your server, your render, your railway, all of these things. And it is live. So I think that's a very simple overview. So, and I'll try to get into more details in this, in this big picture type of thing. But so yeah, all of these four things is what makes the website go on and on. There's a lot of, spaghetti code that runs it, but yeah. Anyways, so first things first, your code needs to be buildable, and you have your front end, yeah, React, Vue, Next.js, Express.js, all the JS scripts, TypeScript, manuscripts, everything. So it has to be able to be buildable. So whenever you run npm build or whatever, everything compiles into assets, which are um, basically what HTML and CSS, your HTML needs, and HTML, and CSS are basically, they go hand in hand. So when you run this, you have an this thing, you have the distribution of your files, which is what npm does. It kind of connects everything together, and all of the things that it requires for HTML to be printable and readable. So it has all of that. So once you run npm run build, you have a distribution of folders and of plain HTML, CSS, and JSS, like I said. And you're not actually serving the source. So let's say you upload the source of the code to render, and you obviously render has its own process where you have to run the code. You tell it like, okay, after uploading, I want you to run npm run build. When it runs that, it has the output of that, of the running of the npm build, is is literally just HTML, CSS, and JSS files that your website relies on. And JSS is basically what makes your website reactive. It has all the what do you call it? The async, the synchronous, uh I'm looking for the words and I know the words, but basically what makes the website very reactive and responsive and everything. So yeah, so something like this. So you have your source code, and after the npm run build, you have a distribution index to HTML. This is a JS also style build. So this all of this is handled by your backend server, maybe React, Vue, whatever. It handles all of this and it does it seamlessly. It seems like nothing is happening, but a lot is happening. So for backend, this is basically maybe an API per se. So your server runs your source as a process. That process is called app.listen. So app.listen, this this number doesn't actually matter. Your app can listen on ports 5,000 for all I care. It really doesn't matter. So what matters is making sure nginx makes sure that your app is listening on this. Your What nginx does is like it directs traffic from port 3000 to port 443, which is then mapped publicly so that the client that requested your website is able to um render the right program, which is your own HTML and CSS. So again, it doesn't matter. What matters is your code needs to be buildable, and then the server is just someone else's computer, which I've already said. Render, railway, whatever, everything. These are all someone else's computer. So on my computer, I have this file. This file is called, as you can see right here, how to our websites go online.html. So if I go to my download folder, this is it. Our websites go online, and that's all it is. That's all it is. So basically, I don't need a full computer for this. I don't need to buy a new computer to host all my website because I can't keep my laptop on 24/7. So I have to give that to someone else, and that's what you're paying them for, to keep the lights on your server. So yeah, files only. Yeah, Net Vercel, Netfly, AWS3, Cloudflare pages. It's just a single page website. So you don't need much static hosting basically. And you have VPS. This is basically Linux, a Linux computer for you. And yeah, you install everything, configure Nginx, manage uptime. You can even do Postgres, database, everything, and manage platform. And we all know this: Railway, Render, Heroku, which is basically what most of us use. I mean, these are the most popular, and you have VPS also. Again, people use this also. So again, you kind of, if you're thinking about it, you can kind of group them into one box, but they're also like kind of different things. So, and sometimes these managed platforms, they also serve VPN, VPS, and virtual machines. So yeah, basically, and yeah, in every case, your app ends up listening on ports 3,000, 5,000. It depends on the app that you're using. It can be 8,000, and the provider maps for port 443 to your port 3,000. So it's basically redirecting traffic from you know port 3,000 to port 443. So, and that's basically what nginx is doing. And yeah, so next, your domain is your human readable address. So all of this is about, when you buy or when you go to a domain registrar, Cloudflare, GoDaddy, you are basically buying, you buy a domain address, and your domain address basically is an IP address. Basically, points to an IP address, and that IP address is what your um provider, your what do you call it? So yeah, your registrar. I mean, sorry, your registrar. You pay them $10 to $15 per year, and now you have a domain that they will handle for you, which is the pointing of the IP address. you can kind of see the address in your, when you're configuring the DNS. So you can kind of see the where the domain points to, but yeah, basically when you buy a domain, you're buying also an IP address from your registrar, which handles a lot of complex distance. So yeah, registrars are Namecheap, Cloudflare, Google Domains, GoDaddy. We all know them. Yeah, okay. So right here is the DNS. You have A, which is maps domain to IP address. You always need an A because this is where your IP address is going to be. And CNAME is an alias to another domain. So let's say you have another domain. CNAME is also what you can use to change registrars also. So you have to be careful. It's basically a domain, an alias to another domain that's, let's say you have another domain that you wanted to point to. So anytime someone goes to www. Domain.com, and you wanted to point to another domain which also has another IP address. So domain.com can point to domain xx.com, which can point to, it can go for infinity, but I don't think you want to do that. So let's say you have a business that is registered on this thing, on a website name that is very popular, and you want to change the name of your business, you probably have to change the name of your website address also. So that is, alias to another domain. That's what it means. And your other domain will also have all of this. So, and you have NS, which is, your hosting platform, what it does. Your hosting platform also need to need a configuration on your DNS and your text. This is just, verification, whatever, metadata. And then, okay, this is, this is the overview of what happens when you type mysite.com and hit enter. So your browser checks its DNS cache. So your browser also has a memory, so which it checks if it has visited the website before. And if it hasn't, it asks this recursive resolver. So this is where most of the magic happens. Even I can't properly explain it because I don't know what it does. So it basically does, finding your IP address, and it has its own cache too. So I don't know how to properly explain it, but you know, I wish I could properly, explain it, which maybe this deserves its own video on its own, but recursive resolver, it basically does the magic. And maybe this recursive resolver, this is I have a hard time pronouncing that. Recursive resolver basically, says, I don't know my site.com, but for .com domains, ask this TLS server. So root name server is, there are different sites, which is .com, .org, whatever it may be. So that's basically what root name server. Your root name is the last, after the dot. So dot there are a lot of dots now. Dot Ethereum. Dot I don't know. Like this name keeps skipping me, but you get the point, right? Dot com. Dot org. Dot ng. Yeah. Okay. So now countries. Dot ng. Dot uk. Dot co. Dot uk. They'll have their own root name servers, and basically, and so your root name server says, I don't know my site.com. I don't know my site.com, but for .com domains, ask this TLD server. And yeah, so there are 13 root servers clusters worldwide. And this takes time because it actually is a very comprehensive process. So, imagine the amount of domains there are in the world. And yeah, so your TL this nameserver.com. For my site.com, ask Namecheap's authoritative server. So your registrar, which is Namecheap, GoDaddy, Cloudflare, now is now being referenced by the root name server. That's like, okay, this is where .com lives, right? So for .com, I've seen this is where .com is. And then for my site.com, you have to go to Namecheap, or you have to go to what's the name? You have to go to GoDaddy, or you have to go to Cloudflare, all of these things. And yeah, so once you look up the record for my site.com in your name daddy, in your GoDaddy or your Namecheap, that's when you now see the IP address, which then returns, your IP address. And then your browser connects to the IP address, which is your server. So, sorry, your browser connects to the IP address, which was just served. And then your HTML arrives, which is magic. So, yeah, when you also have Namecheap, which is there's a process missing here, which is from name Namecheap to your server, which is where your hosting platform. How does that happen? That happens because you already did this. Your DNS records, they handle most of, okay, Versal is the one that's gonna, return this and whatever. It does a lot of that heavy lifting also. So just be careful. That's between here. That's between getting your IP address and your distance. As you can see, 20 milliseconds. DNS does a lot of stuff there. So, and then it does the TCP, TLS handshake, and then you have an HTML page and it arrives. Let me see what I wrote here. Okay, so time to live, that is TTL, 300 seconds, 5 minutes, a day before switching hosts. All right, you don't need to know all of this. Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. And then, yeah, HTTPS, TLS handshake. So this is basically how, HTTP handles the handshake. It is very, technical. So I'm just going to read it because even I have a hard time. TCP handshake, um, you have your TLS client hello, and you have a server certificate, you have your browser verification, you have key exchange, you have your get, which is your HTML request goes out. It's a lot of steps, but again, it is very seamless. Just know a lot of magic is happening behind the scenes. And also, let me see. Encryption, yeah, is most likely handled for free by, I think that's SSL certificates. I mean, I'm not sure. So if you're on Version and Fly Railway, sets is auto provision on deploy, zero configuration needed. Yeah. So yeah, it's HTTPS. That S I think stands for secure. So yeah, there's no valid reason not to have an HTTPS. Yeah, in 2024. And then yeah, I think that's everything in it. So you have your hosting, you have your domain DNS, and you have your HTTPS, and you have your backend. Yeah. So these are the tools that handle most of this. Your hosting can be even Railway, even Railway does hosting. So I just did it just because DNS Cloudflare DNS is done by the registrar. So your registrar can even switch. You can change your registrar, and yeah. So you point name servers to Cloudflare. They manage the records and yeah, DDoS protection, whatever. You can even buy domain from. So a lot of these, services they can even be compiled into a service. I don't think there's a service that does all of this, so I don't know. Yeah, so that's the old stack. Domain propagation is the only weight. So what I mean by domain propagation is like how your domain is served to all the servers so that it knows, so that because there's no latency, there's no lag, so that it's much more faster to all the servers in the world, which is there is an international body that handles domain propagation and everything. So yeah, so all the resolvers, remember when I mentioned the resolvers? So yeah, that's all of this. That's everything you need to know about getting your um code from your laptop to live and how your website actually go online. And that's it for this video, honestly. I felt it was, a little bit slow, but I could have done better with how I explained it if I prepared better. So again, I just wanted to, put this out there and just in case anyone finds it useful, in case, you have questions, let me know. And yeah, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and see you in the next one. Bye.